Maya Chen's story begins in a place most people would never notice, the servants' quarters behind the grand Westbrook mansion. While the family lived in luxury on the other side of the house, Maya and her mother shared a small room that barely fit 2 beds and a tiny desk. But Maya never complained. This was home, and her mother had worked hard to give them even this much. Every morning started the same way. Maya's alarm buzzed at 5:30, and she'd quietly slip out of bed, careful not to wake her mother who had usually worked late the night before. By 6, she was in the Westbrook Library, dusting shelves and organizing books before anyone in the main house stirred. The library was massive, filled with thousands of books from floor to ceiling. Most were just for show, collecting dust because no one really read them anymore. But to Maya, each book was a treasure waiting to be discovered. She had discovered something magical about this daily routine. While she cleaned, she could read. A few pages here, a chapter there. At first it was just novels, stories that let her escape into different worlds. But then she found the science section, physics, mathematics, quantum mechanics. These books spoke a language that made her heart race with excitement. They were difficult, sometimes seemingly impossible to understand, but Maya loved a challenge. The Westbrook children never paid attention to her. To them, she was just part of the background, like the furniture or the paintings on the walls. Richard, the youngest, would sometimes leave his mess everywhere, and she'd clean up after him without a word. Catherine, the middle child, practiced piano for hours, and Maya would listen while she vacuumed, secretly enjoying the music. And then there was Dr. Elizabeth Westbrook, the oldest, who came home occasionally from her university position. She was different from her siblings, quieter, more focused, but she never really saw Maya either. Maya attended Lincoln High, the public school across town. It wasn't a bad school, but it wasn't exactly preparing anyone for university either. Her math teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, was kind but overwhelmed with 30 students per class. When Maya finished her assignments early, he'd just tell her to help other students or read quietly. There was no advanced program, no special resources for students who wanted more. So Maya had learned to teach herself. At night, after all her chores were done and her mother was asleep, Maya would pull out her flashlight and the notebook she kept hidden under her mattress. She'd work through problems from the university textbooks she'd been secretly reading in the library. Calculus, differential equations, linear algebra, subjects most people didn't touch until college, if ever. Her hand would cramp from writing, her eyes would burn from the dim light, but she couldn't stop. Solving these problems made her feel alive in a way nothing else did. Her mother worried about her. "Maya, baby, you need to sleep," she'd say, noticing the dark circles under her daughter's eyes. "You're going to make yourself sick." But how could Maya explain? How could she tell her mother that while she was grateful for everything they had, she dreamed of more? Not wealth or luxury like the Westbrooks, but knowledge, understanding, the chance to use her mind for something that mattered. One Tuesday morning changed everything. Maya was dusting Mr. Westbrook's desk. He was the father, a businessman who collected expensive things, including academic papers, to look sophisticated, when she noticed a manuscript left open. It was covered in complex equations and diagrams. The title read, "Quantum Entanglement Applications in Secure Communication Systems" by Dr. Elizabeth Westbrook. Maya knew she should just dust around it and move on. This wasn't her business. But her eyes caught an equation in the middle of page 7, and something looked wrong. She leaned closer, her dustcloth forgotten. The mathematical notation was describing a quantum state, but there was an error in the calculation, a small one that most people would miss, but it would throw off all the conclusions that followed. Her heart pounded. Should she say something? To whom? Dr. Elizabeth barely knew she existed. Mr. Westbrook certainly wouldn't believe her. And what if she was wrong? What if her self-taught knowledge had missed something, and she was about to embarrass herself? But Maya couldn't let it go. That night, she rewrote the entire section in her notebook, working through the mathematics step by step. She wasn't wrong. The error was real, and she'd found a more elegant way to approach the entire problem. Before she could talk herself out of it, she wrote a careful note on a piece of paper, explaining the issue and showing the correction. She signed it only MC and left it tucked into page 7 the next morning, For 3 days, nothing happened. Maya began to think Dr. Elizabeth had never seen the note, or had seen it and thrown it away. Maybe she'd been offended that someone had dared to question her work. Maya felt sick with regret and anxiety. Then on Friday, there was a new paper on the desk. This time it was just a single page with a complex problem written at the top and a note. MC, if you can solve this, I want to know who you are. EW! Maya's hands trembled as she read it. This wasn't just any problem. This was a challenge, something that would take hours of concentrated work. Dr. Elizabeth was testing her, trying to see if the first correction had been a fluke or if MC really understood advanced physics. That weekend, Maya barely slept. She worked through the problem from every angle, filling page after page in her notebook. She made mistakes, crossed them out, started over. Her mother asked if she was feeling okay, and Maya just smiled and said she had a big school project. Finally, on Sunday night, she cracked it. The solution was beautiful, revealing patterns in the quantum mechanics that the problem itself hadn't explicitly asked for. She left her solution on Monday morning, her heart racing so fast she thought she might faint. This time, Dr. Elizabeth responded within a day. Another problem, harder than the last, with a short note. Impressive. Let's see if you can handle this. And so it began, their secret exchange. Every few days, a new problem would appear on the desk. Maya would solve it, often adding her own observations and questions. Dr. Elizabeth would respond, sometimes with answers, sometimes with even deeper questions. It was like having a teacher who actually challenged her, who saw what she was capable of and pushed her further. Maya felt alive in a way she never had before. She was learning faster than she'd ever imagined possible, and someone brilliant and accomplished, was taking her seriously. She didn't think about what would happen if her identity was revealed. She didn't worry about the consequences. For the first time in her life, she was exactly where she belonged, even if it was just through anonymous notes on a desk. But secrets, Maya would soon learn, never stay hidden forever. Dr. Elizabeth Westbrook was too curious, too determined to let a mystery remain unsolved. And when the truth finally came out, everything Maya knew about her life and her future would change in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. For now, though, she was just a girl with a flashlight and a dream, proving to herself that genius doesn't care where you come from. It only cares what you do with it. Dr. Elizabeth Westbrook had always prided herself on being rational and methodical, but the mystery of MC was driving her slightly crazy. Whoever this person was, they weren't just smart. They were brilliant in a way that challenged even her own understanding of quantum physics. The solutions they provided weren't textbook answers. They showed creativity, intuition, and a deep grasp of concepts. That took most people years of graduate study to master. She had tried everything to figure out who MC was. She'd asked her father if any of his business colleagues had been by the house. She'd questioned her siblings about their friends. She'd even wondered if it was someone from her own department playing an elaborate prank. But nothing added up. The only clue was that the solutions appeared on her father's desk, always in the morning, always in the same neat handwriting. Finally, Elizabeth decided to do something she wasn't proud of. She ordered a small camera online, the kind used for home security, and hid it on the bookshelf facing her father's desk. She felt guilty about the invasion of privacy, but her curiosity had become unbearable. She had to know who MC was. The next morning, she checked the footage on her laptop while drinking her coffee. She fast-forwarded through the empty nighttime hours, then the early morning darkness. At 6:15, the library door opened. Elizabeth leaned closer to her screen, her coffee forgotten. It was Maya, the girl who cleaned the house, the one who was so quiet you could forget she was there. Elizabeth watched as Maya approached the desk, picked up the paper with the latest problem, and read it carefully. Even through the grainy camera footage, Elizabeth could see the concentration on the girl's face, the way her lips moved slightly as she worked through the mathematics in her mind. Maya set the problem down, finished her dusting, and left the library. That was it. No solution yet, but Elizabeth now knew who MC was. She sat back in her chair, stunned. A 17-year-old girl who cleaned houses had been solving graduate-level quantum physics problems. A girl who probably hadn't had access to proper advanced courses was correcting errors in papers written by someone with a doctorate from Cambridge. Elizabeth didn't know whether to be amazed or ashamed that she'd never noticed. The next morning, Elizabeth was waiting in the library when Maya arrived. The girl froze in the doorway when she saw her, the color draining from her face. In her hand was a piece of paper, clearly the solution to yesterday's problem. "Please don't be scared," Elizabeth said softly, standing up slowly. "I'm not angry. I just want to talk." Maya looked like she might run. Her eyes darted to the door, and her hand clutched the paper so tightly it crumpled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have touched your work. I'll stop, I promise." "Please don't tell my mother. She needs this job." "Maya, stop," Elizabeth said, her voice gentle but firm. "You're not in trouble. I'm not going to tell anyone anything. I just want to know, where did you learn quantum mechanics?" Maya's eyes filled with tears. "From your books. From the library. I taught myself. I know I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help it. I love it. I love understanding how things work. And the problems you left, they were the most interesting things I've ever seen. And I'm sorry if I—" "Maya," Elizabeth interrupted, moving closer. "You have nothing to apologize for. Do you understand what you've been doing? Those problems I gave you? Most of my graduate students couldn't solve them. Some of my colleagues couldn't solve them. And you're doing it with no formal training, no guidance, just books and determination?" Maya wiped her eyes, confused by the tone in Elizabeth's voice. It wasn't anger, it was something else. Something that sounded almost like excitement. Elizabeth made a decision in that moment that would change both their lives. "I want to make you an offer," she said. "I'm working on something important. Something that could revolutionize how we think about quantum computing and data security. I need someone brilliant to help me, someone who can see problems from fresh angles. Would you be interested?" Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You want me to help you?" "But I don't have any degrees or certificates or—" "I don't care about certificates," Elizabeth said. "I care about your mind. I care that you see things other people miss. But we'd have to keep it quiet, at least at first. My father wouldn't understand, and neither would most people. Can you keep a secret?" Maya nodded, unable to speak. This felt like a dream, the kind she'd had 100 times but never believed could be real. And so their secret partnership began. 3 times a week after Maya finished her morning cleaning, she'd return to the library where Elizabeth would be waiting. They'd work for 2 hours before Maya had to leave for school. Elizabeth started by filling in the gaps in Maya's knowledge, the formal frameworks and terminology she'd missed by teaching herself. But she was shocked at how quickly Maya absorbed everything and how often the girl's questions pushed her own thinking in new directions. What if instead of treating the quantum states as separate, Maya asked one morning, sketching frantically in her notebook, we looked at them as part of a larger connected system? Like the entanglement isn't the special thing, separation is? Elizabeth stared at the diagram Maya had drawn. It was a completely different way of approaching the problem they'd been stuck on for weeks. Maya, that's actually brilliant. If we can formalize that mathematically, they work together so well it was almost scary. Elizabeth would explain a concept, and Maya would immediately see applications Elizabeth hadn't considered. When they got stuck, Maya's unconventional thinking often provided the breakthrough they needed. Within 2 months, they'd made more progress on Elizabeth's quantum computing research than she'd made in the previous year. But keeping secrets in the Westbrook house was harder than they'd anticipated. James, Elizabeth's younger brother, had always been jealous of his sister's achievements. He worked in finance and made plenty of money, but he'd never had her academic brilliance, and it bothered him more than he'd admit. One morning, he came home early from a business trip and heard voices in the library. Curious, he quietly approached the door and listened. He heard his sister's voice and then another voice, younger, uncertain, but clearly intelligent, discussing complex mathematics. He peeked through the crack in the door and couldn't believe what he saw. Elizabeth was working with Maya, treating the maid's daughter like an equal, like a colleague. James felt his face flush with anger and embarrassment. What was his sister thinking? What would their father say? What would their friends in academia think if they knew Elizabeth Westbrook was collaborating with the help? He burst through the door. What exactly is going on here? Both women jumped, and Maya immediately stood up, backing away from the table where their papers were spread out. Elizabeth's expression hardened. James, this is none of your business. None of my business? James laughed, but there was no humor in it. Our sister is sneaking around with the staff, and you think that's not my business? What would Father say? What would your university say? They'd say I'm working with a brilliant young mind, Elizabeth shot back. Which is exactly what I'm doing. James shook his head. You're naive, Elizabeth. This girl, no offense, Maya, she's not one of us. She doesn't belong in our world. You're going to embarrass yourself and our whole family. Maya felt like she might be sick. This was exactly what she'd feared. She'd let herself believe that maybe things could be different, that maybe her abilities mattered more than where she came from. But James's words reminded her of the truth. People like her weren't supposed to dream this big. I should go, Maya whispered, gathering her things with shaking hands. No, Elizabeth said firmly, putting a hand on Maya's shoulder. You're not going anywhere. She turned to her brother, her eyes blazing. James, get out! This is my research, my decision, and my responsibility. I'm telling Father, James threatened. Go ahead, Elizabeth said, even though Maya could see the worry in her eyes. Tell him, but you're wrong about Maya, and I'm going to prove it. After James left, slamming the door behind him, Elizabeth turned to Maya, who was crying quietly. I'm so sorry, Maya said. I've ruined everything. Your family, your reputation. Stop, Elizabeth said gently. You haven't ruined anything. But Maya, I think it's time we stopped hiding. I think it's time we showed the world exactly what you're capable of. Maya looked up, confused and terrified. What do you mean? The email arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, and Elizabeth read it 3 times before she believed what she was seeing. Their paper had been accepted to the International Quantum Computing Symposium in Geneva. But it was more than just accepted. It had been selected as one of the keynote presentations. Out of hundreds of submissions from the world's top universities and research institutions, their work had been chosen as one of the most significant contributions. Elizabeth immediately drove to the Westbrook mansion, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. She found Maya in the kitchen, helping her mother prepare dinner. Maya, can I borrow you for a moment? Maya's mother looked worried. Ever since James had discovered their secret, the atmosphere in the house had been tense. Mr. Westbrook had been told, and while he hadn't forbidden the collaboration, he'd made his disapproval very clear. Maya's mother feared every day that they'd be asked to leave. In the library, Elizabeth showed Maya the email. The girl read it silently, her eyes growing wider with each sentence. This is real? She whispered. They actually want us to present? It's real, Elizabeth confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. Maya, do you understand what this means? You're going to present groundbreaking research at one of the most prestigious scientific conferences in the world. You're 17 years old, and you're going to stand in front of Nobel Prize winners and show them what you've discovered. Maya sat down heavily, the weight of it all hitting her. I can't do this, she said suddenly. Elizabeth, I can't. I've never even been on a plane. I don't know how to talk to those people. They're going to take one look at me and know I don't belong there. Elizabeth knelt down in front of Maya's chair, taking the girl's hands in hers. Listen to me. I felt the same way at my first major conference. Everyone does, but you know this research better than anyone, even me sometimes. Your insights made this breakthrough possible. You deserve to be there more than half the people in that room. But the real challenge wasn't Maya's confidence, it was everything else. When the news broke that a 17-year-old Maid's daughter would be co-presenting at the symposium, the media went wild. Within days, reporters were camped outside the Westbrook mansion. The story was too perfect, too dramatic. Rich physicist mentors, poor cleaning girl who turns out to be a secret genius. Maya's mother was terrified. They're going to think we're scammers, she told Maya through tears. They're going to say you're just a story, that Dr. Elizabeth did all the work and put your name on it for publicity. Mr. Westbrook was even more furious than they'd anticipated. He called a family meeting, and Maya's mother was summoned along with Elizabeth and Maya. Do you understand what you've done to this family's reputation? He demanded, pacing his study. The media is calling us elitists. They're digging into our finances, our business dealings, all because you, he pointed at Elizabeth, decided to play teacher with the staff. She's not the staff, Father, Elizabeth said coldly. She's a researcher, a brilliant one. And if you can't see that, then you're exactly what the media is calling you. The fight escalated until Maya couldn't take it anymore. She stood up, her voice quiet but firm. Mr. Westbrook, if you want us to leave, we'll leave. My mother and I will find somewhere else to live. But I'm going to that conference, and I'm going to present that research because I earned it. Not because of charity, not because of a story, but because I worked for it. The room fell silent. No one had expected Maya to speak up, least of all with such conviction. Mr. Westbrook stared at her, seeing her, really seeing her, perhaps for the first time. After a long moment, he sighed. No one is leaving, he said quietly. But this better be worth it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Elizabeth worked with Maya every day, preparing her for the presentation. They practiced her speaking, her body language, how to handle difficult questions. Maya's mother used what little savings she had to buy her daughter a proper outfit for the conference. The local news ran a story about Maya, and suddenly she became a minor celebrity at her high school. Some students were supportive, excited for her. Others whispered that she must have cheated somehow, that there was no way someone like her could be that smart. The night before they left for Geneva, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was making a terrible mistake. What if she froze on stage? What if the questions were too hard? What if everyone realized she was just a fraud who'd gotten lucky? Her mother sat on the edge of her bed, stroking her hair like she used to when Maya was little. You know what I think about when I'm scared? Her mother asked. I think about you reading by flashlight at 2 in the morning. I think about how you never complained, never gave up, even when things were hard. That little girl who taught herself physics from library books, she's not going anywhere. She's still inside you. And she's going to walk onto that stage and show everyone what she's made of. The flight to Geneva was Maya's first time on a plane. She pressed her face to the window during takeoff, watching the world shrink below them. Elizabeth smiled at her excitement. You're going to do great, she said. I believe in you completely. The symposium was held in a massive convention center, filled with the world's leading experts in quantum computing. Maya felt microscopic as they walked through the halls, surrounded by people with multiple PhDs, people who'd published hundreds of papers, people who'd won every prestigious award imaginable. She overheard snippets of conversations that were so advanced she could barely follow them. The day of their presentation arrived. Maya stood backstage, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Elizabeth squeezed her hand. Remember, you know this material. You lived it. Just talk to them like you talk to me. When they walked onto the stage, the auditorium was packed. Hundreds of faces stared up at them. Some curious, some skeptical, some clearly wondering what this teenager was doing at a professional conference. Maya saw the cameras at the back, knew that this presentation would be recorded, uploaded, analyzed by thousands of people. Elizabeth spoke first, providing the background and context for their research. Then it was Maya's turn. She stepped up to the microphone, and for a terrifying moment, her mind went completely blank. She looked out at all those faces and forgot everything she'd planned to say. Then she saw Elizabeth's encouraging nod. She remembered her mother's words. She thought about all those nights studying by flashlight, all those problems she'd solved on her father's desk, all the times she'd been told, directly or indirectly, that she wasn't smart enough, wasn't good enough, didn't belong. Maya began to speak. Her voice was shaky at first, but as she got into the material, something shifted. She wasn't reciting memorized lines anymore. She was explaining ideas she genuinely understood and loved. She walked the audience through their breakthrough, showing how they'd approached the problem differently, demonstrating the mathematical elegance of their solution. Elizabeth smiled, but there was determination in her expression. I'm going to submit our research to the International Quantum Computing Symposium, under both our names, as co-authors. But that's one of the biggest conferences in the world, Maya stammered. Everyone would know. Your colleagues, your university, everyone. Exactly, Elizabeth said. And they'll know that you're brilliant. They'll know that genius doesn't care about your address or your parents' jobs. They'll know your name, Maya Chen, and they won't be able to ignore you or dismiss you ever again. Maya's mind raced. This could change everything. Her life, her mother's life, their future. But it could also destroy them if it went wrong. What if the scientific community rejected her? What if they accused Elizabeth of fraud? What if her mother lost her job and they had nowhere to go? But as she looked at Elizabeth's confident face, at the papers spread across the table showing their breakthrough research, Maya realized something important. She'd been hiding her whole life, afraid of being seen, afraid of wanting too much. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to be brave. Okay, Maya said quietly. Let's do it. Neither of them knew it yet, but that decision would set in motion events that would captivate the world and prove that brilliance can emerge from the most unexpected places. When she finished the main presentation, the moderator opened the floor for questions. An older man in the third row stood up. Maya recognized him from papers she'd read. Dr. Heinrich Werner, a prominent German physicist known for being extremely critical. Miss Chen, he said, his accent thick, this is very impressive work, but I must ask, how much of this did you actually contribute versus simply assisting Dr. Westbrook? The room went silent. This was the question everyone had been thinking but been too polite to ask. Maya felt her face flush, but Elizabeth put a hand on her arm. A silent message. You've got this, Dr. Werner, Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. That's a fair question. Dr. Westbrook provided the initial framework, and her expertise filled in gaps in my knowledge. But the core insight, the idea of treating quantum entanglement as the default state rather than the exception, that came from a conversation where I was questioning our assumptions. The mathematical proof in Section 3, that's primarily my work. The applications we discuss in Section 5, those came from Dr. Westbrook's experience. This was truly collaborative research. Dr. Werner nodded slowly. Then perhaps you can help me understand something. In your proof in Section 3, you make a leap on page 8 that I found difficult to follow. Can you walk me through your reasoning? This was a test, Maya realized. He was checking if she actually understood her own work, or if she'd just memorized a presentation. She took a breath and pulled up the relevant slide. Of course. The leap might seem abrupt, but it's based on a property of Hilbert spaces that isn't commonly used in this context. If you consider, she spent the next 5 minutes explaining the mathematical reasoning in detail, even going beyond what was in the paper to address the underlying principles. She drew diagrams in the air with her hands, her nervousness forgotten in the joy of explaining something she truly understood. When she finished, Dr. Werner was smiling. Remarkable, he said. Miss Chen, you have not only answered my question but illuminated an aspect of the problem I had not fully considered. Thank you. The audience burst into applause. More hands went up, scientists eager to ask questions, to probe deeper into the research, to engage with these ideas. Maya answered them all, sometimes asking Elizabeth for help, sometimes handling them entirely on her own. By the end of the session, even the skeptics seemed convinced. As they walked off stage, Elizabeth hugged Maya tightly. You were perfect, she whispered. Absolutely perfect. The rest of the conference was a blur. Scientists approached Maya constantly, wanting to discuss her work, asking about her background, offering encouragement. Representatives from MIT, Cambridge, and Caltech pulled her aside, talking about full scholarships, research opportunities, the chance to work with Nobel laureates. A journalist from a major science magazine wanted to do a profile. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell her story. That night in her hotel room, Maya called her mother. Mama? She said when her mother answered, and then she couldn't say anything else because she was crying too hard. Baby, what's wrong? Her mother asked, alarmed. Nothing's wrong, Maya managed to say. Everything's right. Everything's so right, and I can't believe this is real. She was right to be amazed. Because in just a few days, everything had changed. The girl who cleaned libraries was now being discussed in those same circles as a rising star in quantum physics. And this was only the beginning. The paper they co-authored was published in Nature Physics. Maya was the second author, and this time no one questioned whether she deserved the credit. The physics community was beginning to recognize her name, not as that girl with the inspiring story, but as a serious researcher with valuable contributions. Awards followed. In her junior year, Maya received the prestigious Hertz Fellowship for her work. She was invited to speak at conferences, asked to write articles, interviewed for science podcasts. Tech companies started reaching out, offering internships and eventual positions with salaries that made her dizzy. But success brought new challenges. Some of her old friends from home drifted away, uncomfortable with how different her life had become. Her relationship with her mother remained strong, but there was a new distance, not emotional but experiential. Maya's world had expanded so far beyond where she'd started that sometimes she struggled to explain her daily life to the person who knew her best. Maya also felt a growing sense of responsibility. Every time she gave a talk, young people, especially girls from difficult backgrounds, would approach her afterwards. They'd tell her their stories, their dreams, their fears. They saw themselves in her, and they needed to believe that if she could make it, maybe they could too. So Maya started a mentorship program. Once a month, she'd visit underprivileged schools in the Boston area, talking to students about science and opportunity. She'd tell them her story honestly, the struggles along with the successes, the doubt along with the triumph. "Your zip code doesn't determine your potential," she'd say. "The only limits are the ones you accept." She also worked with Mr. Westbrook's foundation, helping identify and support talented students who needed financial help and encouragement. Reading their applications, seeing their potential, Maya remembered herself at that age. Hungry for knowledge, desperate for a chance, terrified to hope for too much. In her senior year, Maya published 2 more papers as first author. Both made significant contributions to the field of quantum computing. MIT offered her a direct path to their PhD program with full funding and her choice of advisors. But other opportunities beckoned too. Research positions at top labs, offers from tech companies working on cutting-edge quantum systems. The real honor came in June, just after graduation. Maya received word that she'd been awarded the Fields Medal, the highest honor in mathematics, given to researchers under 40 for outstanding discoveries. At 22, she was the youngest recipient ever. The award wasn't just for one paper or one breakthrough, but for her body of work and her innovative approaches to quantum mathematical problems. The award ceremony was held in Paris. Maya stood on stage in an elegant dress her mother had helped her pick out, receiving the medal from the president of the International Mathematical Union. In the audience sat her mother, tears streaming down her face. Elizabeth was there too, beaming with pride. Even Mr. Westbrook had come, and if Maya wasn't mistaken, his eyes looked a bit misty. But the moment that meant the most came afterwards, at a small reception. A young girl, maybe 13, approached Maya shyly. She was there with her father, a mathematician attending the ceremony. "Miss Chen," the girl said quietly, "I read about you, about how you taught yourself from library books. I just wanted to say, I do that too. I'm teaching myself calculus, and my school says I'm too young, but I love it." Maya knelt down to the girl's level. "What's your name?" "Aisha." "Well, Aisha, let me tell you something important. You're not too young, and you're not too anything. If you love mathematics, if it makes you excited and curious, then you're exactly where you need to be. Don't let anyone tell you different." She pulled out a business card, something she never thought she'd have, and wrote her personal email on the back. "If you ever have questions about math or science or college or anything, you email me. Promise." The girl's eyes went wide as she clutched the card. "I promise." A few months later, Dr. Maya Chen returned to the Westbrook estate, not as the maid's daughter, but as the guest of honor at a celebration for the foundation that bore her name. She gave a speech in the same library where she'd once dusted books and left anonymous notes on a desk. 5 years ago, I stood in this room believing I had to hide who I was, she said, looking out at the crowd of students, donors, and supporters. I thought people like me weren't supposed to dream big dreams or reach for impossible goals. But I learned something important. Genius isn't about where you start. It's about refusing to accept limits on where you can go. Her mother sat in the front row, her face radiant with pride. Next to her was Mrs. Patricia Lee, the new head of the foundation, herself a former scholarship recipient who'd gone on to become an engineer. The world is full of kids like I was, Maya continued. Kids working by flashlight, kids teaching themselves from borrowed books, kids with brilliant minds trapped in difficult circumstances. They're in underfunded schools, in homes where they're needed more for chores than homework, in situations where dreaming feels like a luxury they can't afford. But they're there, and they're waiting for someone to notice them, believe in them, give them a chance. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. I was lucky. Someone noticed me. Someone took a chance on me. This foundation exists to make sure that luck isn't required anymore. We're going to find those kids, we're going to support them, and we're going to watch them change the world one equation at a time. The applause was thunderous. But Maya wasn't thinking about the applause or the medal or the prestigious research position she'd accepted. She was thinking about a 13-year-old girl teaching herself calculus, about a boy in Detroit who'd just received a foundation scholarship, about all the Maya Chens out there waiting for their chance. Her journey from the servants' quarters to the stages of international conferences had been unlikely, difficult, and at times seemed impossible. But she'd learned that genius doesn't care about your address or your parents' income. It only cares what you do with it. And Maya Chen had proven that when brilliance meets opportunity, nothing, absolutely nothing, can stand in its way.